Hi, I am Dr. Monica Moody Moore, and welcome to today's episode of Pivot on Purpose. I'm super excited about today's topic. Get in here and close the door. I've made the office comfortable for you. Today, we're focusing on interviewing, and I'm giving you insider tips. I'm actually telling you what I think they don't want you to know, that the interview you actually govern and direct. Now, let me pull back for a second. That may have actually blown your mind already. You're going in as a prospective candidate, and you may be curious, how on earth is it that you own the interview and you direct the interview? Well, I'm going to give you a couple of insights, some tips and tricks of the trade that can help you stay in control, even when you're a candidate and you're not the decision-making person for whether or not you get the job. A couple of things first. Preparation is always key. Going into the interview, and I know that goes without saying, but let me say it anyway. Yes, you want to do a deep dive on the company, but that's not where people often go awry. Oftentimes, they'll go to the website and look at any published reports, maybe even know someone who's worked there or works there now. Perhaps even you were referred for that particular position. But here's what I mean about doing your homework. You're doing your own deep dive into yourself first, your attributes, your strengths, where you've been and what you've done, and how well you can tell that story succinctly and in a way that makes people want to learn more. So, going into your own skill set first, and then assigning that to some value in the job description in terms of what you've done and what you've experienced and why it then matters for the responsibilities of the role is what I'm suggesting from the onset. That you go into the job interview not only prepared to speak about the company and what the company is doing from what you can ascertain on the outside looking in, but you go into the interview with the deep dive understanding about yourself and your own skills and attributes and strengths. And then you've married those to the job description. So that will already put you in a position of strength going into the conversation. So you can show up a little more confident in understanding who you are, what the role requires, and how you believe your responsibilities align. No more will you be caught off guard with that basic question of, tell me why you've chosen to apply for this job. And you sit there with the crickets going off in your head thinking, what job did I apply to? Well, you won't have that experience using my suggestion with the first things first of going into yourself, knowing the company, knowing how your strengths align to the job description, because you would have already taken care of that. So do that piece first. But this is how you can start to direct and control the interview. Of course, it's with your mannerisms as well, always making sure that you're making steady eye contact and you're bringing forward either a smile. If you're a full smile person, I tend to be, my eyes light up. I speak with a smile in my voice, but not everyone does. Some people are a little more stoic, a little more reserved with their affect. And sometimes there's a cultural difference depending on where you're from and what you're used to. You may actually present in a very different way than what I'm describing. As long as it is authentic to you and aligned with the responsibilities of the position. So, for example, if you're going in for a corrections officer role and you're all smiley and giggly and all of that, I don't know how well that may work. But going in for a position in which I know I'm very strong in my approach and in my sense of self, so I may soften my approach with a little more smile, a little more sentiment to let the group know that I am a friendly contributor to the work to be done. And I come with the best intentions to do the work with a lot of pleasantry and still understanding and competency. So, leaning into yourself with how you choose to show up in the interview, I suggest you hone in on that thought as you get underway. Being in control of your own personal mannerisms, you notice as I'm doing this discussion today, I'm keeping steady eye contact with you. I am not doing a lot of movements with my arms. I know in this setting, you don't necessarily see my hands. They always say that's a good idea. I do have hands and fingers. You can see those present. So I'm just keeping myself very poised, but at the same time, very approachable, or so I perceive. So as you're commanding the interview and you're keeping your eye contact, you're engaging people with compelling voice and tone and with your own manifestation of self, you're also helping to shape the inquiry. Not all interviewers are good interviewers. Keep that in mind. So while you're expecting Barbara Walters or Oprah Winfrey or whomever you think is a really good interviewer to show up, not everyone is. Some people load questions with 4 and 5 questions in one question, and it's harder to follow along. So when you find yourself in a situation where someone hasn't done their own homework to prepare well for the interview, perhaps they've not looked at your resume, perhaps they don't know the particulars of the responsibility or have taken note of some of the things that you've done that are completely relevant to the job in front of you, or ask questions that have 4 and 5 questions stringed together as one. If you find yourself in that circumstance, you can do a couple of things. One is slow down the pace of the interview. If someone's coming at you fast with lots of things at once, you can pull back even with the gesture. I really appreciate your questions, and I heard a few of them there. Let me try to unpack them. And pardon me if I ask for a repeat. I want to make sure I've gotten it all right. I heard the 3 questions, and I'll tackle those first if that's okay. So now that person that's just loaded so many questions into one bulk question, I've now tried to demonstrate a way in real time to slightly pull back, recognize the fact that those are good questions and you've heard a few, so you're following along and you want to do your part to respond to each, respecting the fact that they've asked it, and you're going to unfold those questions one at a time. And if you happen to forget something, it's okay. We're human. You can simply lean back in and say, I believe of the questions I've addressed a few, and maybe there's one I've not addressed. If you could help me pinpoint what it is I've most missed in responding, I want to make sure I give that response its full attention as well. We're all human in this space, at least until the robots take over. So the most you can do is try to calibrate the timing and the pace to give yourself a little bit of room to digest and to also help others help themselves be better interviewers. So this pacing matters. You can also unpack questions in ways that work for you. Additionally, if someone asks a question that's posed in a way that's not the way you would address it, or it doesn't even resonate with you, I'll give you an example. Often questions such as, tell me about a time that you failed. Well, me personally, I really don't consider failure. Even when I am not successful at something, it's not a failure, it's a learning experience. So the way the question is asked, tell me about a time that you failed, I personally might have a little difficulty responding to, well, I failed yesterday. So I may respond like this. I understand that interest in understanding my failures, and I too do a lot to reflect on every experience I've had to see where I could do better and improve. So no doubt there's probably many more examples that I could share, but what comes top of mind is less about a failure and more about a recalibration and more about a learning or lesson learned that I have come to understand better as a result of not getting that last opportunity I pursued, or as a result of a project that did not conclude the way I anticipated. What I'm trying to demonstrate for you, even though it was a little clunky at first, to just give you an example, someone can phrase a question a certain way. Tell me about a time you failed. But if that doesn't register with you and you're trying to suggest to them, I don't fail, I learn. Whereas if you said it that way, it may sound a bit cocky, but you can say it gently in a way that doesn't sound so abrupt. You can just reframe their question to simply say, that's a good question. And I love the way you positioned it, because as I think about times I haven't met my own expectation or desire, I've seen it so much as a learning opportunity and a chance to continually improve, that I haven't categorized it as a failure, although I can understand how that question is fair and how perhaps you might. I do see those times as being episodes where learning has been really optimized. And a time that maybe something didn't go as anticipated, but yet I learned, includes the following. You see how I took their question, repackaged it, still gave them credit for asking me a good question, still tried to demonstrate that I was thinking it through and mulling it over and trying to reframe it in a way that speaks my love language. That's another example. Times that you can think about how you set the tone in your interview is if you're willing to take risks and differentiate yourself. We're all used to the type of question that begins with, tell me a little about yourself. And everyone begins in the same general way, either maybe something of I grew up, or I went to school, or I worked in such and such. What about this type of introduction? Dr. Moore, tell me about yourself. What do we need to know about you? Thank you for asking that. I see myself as a poet and a problem solver. The poet in me allows me to read between the lines and to actually be metaphorical and also see things in creative ways. And the problem solver piece is also creative, but it allows me to not stop at the first right answer. And that piece of me also ensures that I don't give up so easily, that I want to crack the nut and figure things out. So I guess the best way to quickly learn about me as you see me today is to know that at least I see myself as a poet and a problem solver, that I'll bring to you on day one and the days that follow a very creative approach to problem solving, a very metaphorical way at understanding stories so that we can learn differently and learn in a very emotional way that makes the material a little more robust for us or a little more sensational to the person hearing it. But that's where I begin, and how I have used my poetry and problem solving in my professional life is, as you've seen in my resume, I've done da 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 da, and I'm really pleased and proud about ABC. And I'm just very happy to be here today. So thank you for taking the time with me, and I hope to learn more about you as well. So again, I'm using this video to both express and to model some of the same sentiments that I'm bringing about. It is risky to begin in a non-traditional way. And just know if you go there, one, it has to be authentic to who you are. If you go down a non-traditional way and then you're very vanilla and very mechanical thereafter, it may seem that it was a one-off. It was something you practiced, but you can't carry it through. But if it is really who you are and how you see yourself, then those interviewing you will have a sense of who they may get as their new employee. Someone who is willing to mix things up and take a little bit of risk and show their authentic self. And if they have an appreciation for that, you may be actually well aligned. If you're in a very mechanical, very status quo, we don't do those types of things environment, then I would just encourage you to think differently about that type of response, if that's the type of role you're applying for or to. So again, you can show up by setting the pacing and the tone. You can recalibrate and redirect questions. You can also ensure alignment between your background and the company and the responsibilities of the role. But I also want to give you another idea as to how you can control the environment. We always hear we have to come with questions, but knowing what types of questions that are most advantageous is sometimes challenging. Too basic, then you don't get any brownie points. Questions such as, tell me the next steps in the process. That's a very basic question, but doesn't really deepen your understanding of the organization or of the work. You can ask questions that really show that you're curious about the nature of the work. What does success look like in the person in this position, let's say 1 year into the role? You see how that question brings about a deeper thought. Someone would have to mull it over. What does success look like? And success may look differently if you have a committee or a panel of people with different perspectives on what they need from the person in this role. So again, thinking about the environment you're in can help you conjure up the best types of questions to ask. I would encourage you always to go to the interview understanding that you are interviewing the organization as well. So the questions you ask about what was the catalyst for this position, if in fact it is a new role, to get them to unearth what problem spots they were experiencing that made them say, not another day, can we go without having this role? Or if it is a backfill, a role they've already had, what are some of the things that the last person learned, experienced, did that now will have an influence on how the organization wants to go forward? Meaning, what did they learn from the last person who held the role in terms of helping the new person who comes in to get up to speed quickly and be off and running? So think of what kind of deep dive questions that are beyond the standard static questions that you can ask to make sure that you're vetting the organization as well. I would leave you with this hack at the end, just for you to really drive the point home as you do your own preparation work for the interviews you're going to. Before you go too far into any interview process, have a sense on who's on your interview committee. Try to do some background work on each of those people, even if it means doing an off-record view on if you can see any of their social media, if you have any other insights of other people who may know them. Just being able to have some personal stories or attributes can be helpful. Now, you don't want to go and show that you're spying on them. Oh, I saw your Facebook page. How was your son's soccer game? You see how that can be a little inappropriate. So again, not to go to that extent, but again, if you're prowling around and you see some things, then you can drop kernels of information to see if someone picks up on the suggestion that you've given. You know that someone is very much into yoga. You know that you're trying to get started on your own yoga journey, but just seeing that that person had a Facebook post about their yoga class over the weekend, and it's something that you're interested in, you may say during those small talk opportunities, but I've been really wanting to get into yoga. If I just knew someone who was already really into it, I might really be able to get a new friend and kind of like get up and going there. And maybe someone can take the bait and lean in on, oh, I love yoga. I go every single weekend, for small talk. So my point about this area, the hack, is small talk matters. It is how, when you go into the organization, if you have to show up in person, the person who greets you, how did you respond to them? Were you able to engage them in meaningful ways that actually was more than just, office chit chat like, hello, how are you? Nice weather today. But, oh, beautiful blouse. I really like that color. It makes your eyes pop if that's the case, but just don't be inappropriate. I don't want to give suggestions that are out of bounds. But just being able to make small talk casually and in ways that are very organic. And that's not just before the interview starts. That's even to have levity during the interview and to have those humorous moments where you create those opportunities for those people that are being very serious at the time to lighten their load, right? This is their work day. They want a colleague or a coworker or a boss or some leader that will also be able to be a good human in the workplace. So here's the hack. How are you showing up human? How are you putting in humor? How are you just speaking to any vulnerabilities you may have in a light, playful way that's not immature and not too playful, but at the same time appropriate for the workplace? So the hack is to make sure you concentrate on the small talk and become natural. So I want to give you some homework. Do practice recording yourself. Just go on your Zoom, open up your camera, make a quick video so that you can see how you come across. Give yourself a few static standard questions to ask and see how you respond. Try to do real role play as if you were answering those questions. If there's any moments of lightheartedness that you can insert and still be professional and keep the conversation moving, how can you go about that? what I want you to practice. Open up your Zoom, activate your camera, press the record, give yourself 5 to 10 really good questions, and go ahead and practice. I'll give you a couple to get started. It's some of the more basic ones, but they're the ones that either get people off to a really great start or trip them up. Tell me about yourself. And then someone says, well, where do you want me to begin? Well, that's not a good response. You want to be able to take that ball and completely start to run with it. Remember when I said I'm a poet and a problem solver? I didn't ask them, well, what do you mean by that question? I just went with it and then give enough room for people to refine if in fact they want to say, that's not what I really meant. I want you to talk about something in particular. So I want you to practice with a couple of questions. Tell me about yourself. Why did you apply for this job? If you're in this role, what contribution or value add do you believe you can make on day one? What are some of the things that are included in the job description that you think you might have a little more struggle or challenge around? Now, that's a question you have to be careful of. You don't want to start a laundry list of all the things you're going to struggle. You want to put yourself in a positive light, which is, I do believe strongly that I can fulfill the responsibilities of this job to the greatest degree. In terms of areas of growth that I want to improve and learn upon, certainly there'll be examples of that too. Looking at your job description, I see these areas that I'd want to make sure that I'm bringing my full understanding to. So I look to those here to help me learn. I'll do my part too to learn as much as possible, both through internal assets and external assets. But here are two areas that have piqued my interest in terms of wanting to learn more and wanting to do better. I don't know that it would be a struggle as much as it would be an opportunity for growth. So again, do you quickly see how I reframed their question? They wanted to talk about struggle. I wanted to talk about improvement and growth, and take some of those basic kind of questions, make your own as well. People can put in the chat other types of questions that trip them up or that they think are good examples to use to make a sample video on. And let's create this ecosystem together so we can start to be prepared for these interviews and do differently when our time comes to make the case for ourselves. Thanks for joining this week's episode of Pivot on Purpose. I'm Dr. Monica Moody Moore.